Hello, I am your host, Lakeisha Lynette Beeler, and this is Tea with Me. I'm going live tonight because I wanted to kind of focus in on what's going on with Haiti, not just the Haitian people. I know recently 7,000 people were sent back to Haiti. They were trying to cross into the U.S. from the U.S. Mexican border, and the U.S. government sent them back. But then recently, um, if you go back a little bit further, they had another earthquake. Then their president got assassinated. And then if you even go further back than that, there just seems to be this long history of political corruption, economic instability. They had another massive earthquake not even that long ago where it just really it killed a lot of people, destroyed a lot of things, and a lot of people. I know, a lot of Christian leaders will say, "Oh, Haiti is cursed," because how they freed themselves, or so-called freed themselves. But in this actual episode, I want to dive into this concept of them being cursed, this story of how they freed themselves, and what freedom actually looks like. So we can then, as thinking individuals, we all have a brain, could determine for ourselves whether this story of that we've been told of how they freed themselves is actually truth or not, and if there are some other forces at play to, because if there is a curse, a curse is not necessarily something that you bring on yourself. A curse can be something someone else brings on you as well. So I want to kind of dive into this concept. Now, before I start, I want to start off by this today, and may he rest in peace, Colin Powell, former U.S. Secretary of State. He actually passed today. And it was just fitting that as I was doing the research for this podcast, I came across an article called Why the U.S. Owes Haiti Billions. This was written by Bill Quigley, who's a law professor at Loyola University of New Orleans. And so he started off this article with a quote from Colin Powell, where Colin Powell said that he stated that his foreign policy view was the Pottery Barn rule, which says that if you break it, you own it. So I want to dive into this. And his if you read the article, he just goes into the history of Haiti and actually the US's intervention in Haiti, pretty much from the time they so-called liberated themselves to back in, I think he goes back to recent history. Let's see how far back he goes. But the U.S. has been involved in Haiti since they actually freed themselves. So if you go back to the Haitian Revolution, let's start there. Let's just go through this chronological order, and then what we'll do is make a determination for ourselves of what is going on there, whether or not they are cursed, and if they are cursed, is this a curse that they brought on themselves based off of what some people say, based because of how they freed themselves, which is to some people view it as them just killing all of these innocent people. But let's look into that and see what was really going on here. So we're going to take this back as a time span of right before they freed themselves up until now. Let's say now, up until what is this, weeks ago, where the U.S. is sending 7,000 Haitians back to this very unstable country right now because of the earthquake, because their president has been was assassinated. He was killed recently. So they have all these things going on. So the U.S. is still involved in Haiti, even though history will tell you that the U.S. occupied Haiti from 1915 to 1934 because of all of this instability that was going on. And so troops were sent there. But if you go into history and if you read this specific article and even do research by yourself, you'll see that the U.S. has always been involved in Haiti, and they are to this day. They're still involved in Haiti. Even with them sending back these 7,000 people, they're still going to be involved in Haitian politics. Why do I say that? I say that because when you do the research back into how Haiti actually so-called, and the reason why I say so-called got their freedom, I don't believe that Haiti ever was freed. I don't. If you look at like, let's say, Cuba and Puerto Rico, when the U.S. When there was this war, what was it, the Spanish American War, and the U.S. got, I think, the Philippines, Guam, if I'm not mistaken, Puerto Rico in this war, but they also got one, we should say, I don't know what word to use, it's just weird, to say you got a country or people in this exchange with another country, and this other country was not even the country of the people. But anyway, that's a different podcast. But anyways, got this country. They also got Cuba. But Cuba got their independence. They were not considered to be a territory of the U.S. like Puerto Rico and Guam and even the Philippines. Okay, they maintained their independence. Now, if you look at that situation and you compare and contrast as far as the territories are concerned, my take is that Haiti was if you go back to the Louisiana Purchase, what was this, back in like the early 1800s, right before the Louisiana Purchase, there was this secret treaty between, I think it was France and, if I'm not mistaken, Spain, in order to claim, I believe it was Arkansas, or let's say Louisiana, because at that time Arkansas was part of Louisiana. It was considered to be, part of New France. But this was this secret treaty that happened. So let's say the word off the books, Louisiana, Arkansas, at that time was part of this little secret treaty. Okay. So why I'm correlating Haiti to Arkansas and the New France and this portion of the United States, that, when I'm going to talk about a little bit more, the U.S. actually purchased from France after the Haitian Revolution, after that big, that loss for France there, the U.S. was able to purchase the Louisiana Purchase, which included pretty much half of the United States for pennies on the dollar. The U.S. purchased all of these states from France for less than what Haiti was sanctioned for the loss of life and the loss of slaves that they got sanctioned for because of the Haitian Revolution, just to kind of put this at scale. So anyways, why I'm correlating the Spanish American War to this Haitian Revolution and the Louisiana Purchase is to say Haiti has been an off-the-book territory of the United States since the Haitian Revolution. Okay, so when you look at what happened in the Haitian Revolution, so the reason why I mentioned voodoo in this particular podcast is because stories go that is how Haiti won that particular war, and that's how they won their independence, is because there was this Haitian voodoo ceremony that was performed where the neck of a pig was slit by the spirit of Urzeli Dentor, which Urzeli Dentor is like a spirit, like a warrior type spirit. And Ogun he's like a spirit of like iron, a spirit of like war. So it's said that this particular ceremony was performed, the neck of a pig was slit, and all of the people that were at this ritual, which later went on to fight and win in this war, drank the blood of the pig. Okay, so I'm going to say this. I don't believe it. I know people are going to totally disagree with me because this story has been handed down forever, and people just, especially black people around the world, it's like, oh my God, Haiti got their independence by, focusing on their religion, the religion of Africa. I don't believe it. I don't. First of all, I think instead of it putting voodoo and African spirituality, which voodoo, the religion of voodoo, which is VOU, I believe DOU, but it's not spelled VOODOO. That is the Haitian voodoo. It's not, which is a derivative of voodoo that originates in Benin, Africa. So that particular, I think it puts it into a negative light. They slit the blood in the neck of a pig, and they drank blood. Okay. From my understanding of African spirituality, when animals are sacrificed, which even in the Bible, in the Old Testament, animals were sacrificed. And even in some of I call them new because some of these African traditions, they date back further than like Christianity and Islam. There's animal sacrifice. But what happens is the food is like with in Judaism, you have kosher food, halal, I think that's for Muslims. This food, and even with African spirituality, when these animals are sacrificed, it's not just this brutal, like, bloodlust type situation where they're drinking blood. It's like they're sacrificing these animals and then they eat the meat. Like when people eat meat, they're dedicating this animal. So for first of all, the story, I don't believe, first of all, because of that. I think it puts African, instead of people having this sense of pride and, oh, this African-based religion was able to free the people. I think it gives a negative connotation, first of all, because it puts this particular religion in a negative light. Second of all, I don't believe it. I believe what happened was that there was the intervening of the United States, because and it said, read this article and do the research for yourself, that the U.S. government was helping the Haitians fight against Spain. I also believe because neighboring, what we call now Dominican Republic, was a territory of Spain, and that was one of the main colonial powers at that time, was helping these Haitians. So, and I'm not saying that voodoo and African spirituality is not real. I'm not saying that and has no power. I'm not saying that at all. But what I do believe is that any type of spiritual practice that you use, usually what you're doing is you have to do some type of practical work as well. And also some people say, well, the practical work was them fighting. And that was the practical work that they applied with this ritual. I just personally don't believe it. I believe that they were assisted by opposing powers that had something to gain at the loss of these Haitians. The Haitians have never been free. They're not free to this day. But the U.S. had something to gain, as well as Spain had something to gain with the Haitians, believing that they were going to get some type of freedom by fighting. So they fought this war. They won because they had assistance from the U.S., which, again, let me go back to the fact that after the Haitian Revolution, after France lost to the Haitians, the U.S. was able to purchase half of what we know as the United States today for pennies on the dollar. That right there, the Haitian Revolution and the loss to France, if that had never happened, the U.S. would not be what it is today. It would not be the political force, any type of force, the most powerful nation on the face of this earth. The U.S. was able to obtain this power in this land that they got from France because France was indebted. They had, of course, you have your military being slaughtered. You have people being murdered. They had all kind of things that were going on because of this. So they sold all of these states to the United States. This is what created almost half of the United States. Okay, so what I believe, and this is my opinion, and chime in if if you have different opinions, and we'll talk about it. The U.S. helped Haitians. What I believe is, but the Haitians were bamboozled, and blacks that think that, oh, this is just source of power and pride. I don't believe so. You have to have economic power, like Haiti is showing us today. You will continually struggle if you have no economic power. To me, that's bondage. So that's why I say so-called freedom, because that is bondage. If you have no economic power, you can't do nothing. Look at Haiti. Even to this day, what happened? Let's look at history. And I'm going to post the link to this article where this professor at Loyola University just really broke this down. What happened was France saddled Haiti with a debt. And they even sent troops there, like, pay up, you owe us, I forgot how many, ridiculous amount of money. What did Haiti have to do? Which is really, look at how this works. They won so-called their freedom. Then France comes in and sacks them with this debt. They're like, you owe us. We've lost all these slaves. We lost all this life. You owe us millions of dollars. What did Haiti have to do? They had to borrow from French banks and the U.S. to pay this money back to France that they just finished paying off in 1947. Okay? Now now they're in debt to the U.S. They're in debt to France. Are you free? How are you free when now you owe the country that you so-called got your freedom from millions of dollars? You have to take money from this other country that hadn't even never left you. The U.S. never left Haiti. The U.S. used Haitians to fight this war against the French so that they can get all of these other states in the United States. Then what happened? They kept Haiti in bondage because, of course, now you got all these free black people running around, so they have to keep them under control. So that's why you got all these U.S. troops stayed in Haiti. People say, oh, the U.S. occupied Haiti from 1950 to 1930 something. No, they didn't. The U.S. has continually occupied Haiti. They're constantly sending people over. They're putting these elected officials, even when the people vote for somebody else, the U.S. government will smash that down, and they will put people in office like Papa Doc. Papa Doc was the longest I think Papa Doc was his son. No, Baby Doc was his son. Papa Doc, 14 years. That's longest reigning leadership there. Who he got put in power from? The U.S. government, because they have to maintain control there. This is an off-the-books territory of the U.S. But what happens now, because they're an off-the-book territory and they're not even recognized as a territory of the U.S., they don't get the assistance like other places would get. No one wants to help Haiti. Even other countries is not going to want to help Haiti because Haiti is viewed in a certain, they're viewed negatively, so they can't even get any help from other places. Their economy is unstable. Their political system is unstable. But why? Because the U.S. is keeping them in this almost, well, this professor said it well, it's almost like this plantation type of relationship that they have them in. So when I say so-called freedom, I'm not saying that to be offensive to the Haitians at all, nor am I saying that to say that African spirituality has no power. What I'm saying is that we have to look at things through history and through the eyes. Who benefited from this? The Haitians didn't. Now, hundreds of years later, we can look back and say, were they freed? Did this act free them? Who benefited from this? The U.S. And the U.S. is still benefiting from it this day. Read this article again, very educational, but I did some other research and background and just knowing the knowledge of Haiti, but even rice. Haiti used to produce their own rice, and I believe they used to export it. Now, guess what? They import all of their rice. Guess where they import it from? The U.S. and sugar. Haiti was the jewel of, I forgot what they called the jewel. I don't know if it was the Americans, but anyways, they made a third of France's money from, I don't know if it was outside territories or just in general, came from Haiti. Where was it coming from? Coffee, sugar. Now you telling me France is making all of this money from Haiti being one of the staples being sugar, and now Haiti has to import their own sugar. Why is this being done? Because the U.S. is crippling the Haitian economy. Why? Because they're trying to keep Haiti under control. Period. Haiti has never been free. So to go back to the question of the name of the podcast, is Haiti cursed? Haiti, let me try to break this down. Haiti, because to me, poverty is a curse. Poverty is a curse to me. So I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to leave it open. And the reason why I say that, because this is not to put Haiti in a negative light. It is to bring it, open our eyes to what we get told, the information we get told, and to dig up under this so that we can know what is going on in a particular situation. And with Haiti, the people will never be free. They're not free. So we need to stop calling them the first black free nation. They are not free. They are not free. They're not. Okay? So we need to stop saying that, because to say that is to impart some type of power on them they don't have. Then we don't help, because when you think somebody already has something, why would you give a nation of freedom? Why would anybody even call? We need to be saying free Haiti, but we saying they free. And we looking at it as a place of strength. They're not free. They're not free. They never have been free. They were in pawn in the game to be able to get a land and to get power and to dominate this part of the hemisphere, period. And so now because they were used as pawns, now they're suffering. They are suffering. And they believe they're free, because I've heard Haitians say, they'll tell African Americans, oh, you guys need to rise up. You guys need to fight back and get some freedom. And in my mind, it's like, y'all need to get some freedom. Of course, we have issues that African, this ain't to offend nobody. But the thing about it, to me, again, you cannot do anything you have to have economics. I'm going to equate this, look like the Native Americans. If you look at the Native Americans and you look at what happened with the Native Americans when all of these European countries came in and start splicing up this land, what happened with the Native Americans, and look at what's happening to the Native Americans today. And what you're going to do, you're going to find is you're going to tie their plight down to economics. The Native Americans were constantly being shifted around. Oh, live over there. You guys can live there, because there were, of course, these European nations were trying to grab up more land to be able to expand slavery. Okay, so once they found, okay, this is some good land over here for slavery, they'll shift them over there. And then when they found out, no, we need more, they will shift them again. And so they were being moved until they went onto the Trail of Tears. They got moved to Indian Territory, where is that? At Oklahoma and Kansas. Up until this time, before then, they were starving, though. Before they got moved over into Indian Territory, they were constantly having issues with being able to feed themselves, being able to provide for their people. They were given money, stipends that they were supposed to get. But guess what the government did? They would withhold the stipends for such a period of time and they would put restrictions that they couldn't use those stipends to buy land. Okay? So what happened is you see that the economics that they were dealing with crippled them. And even up to this day, when you go into some of these reservations, high incidence of alcohol abuse, high incidence of domestic violence, things that typically stem from economic issues Native Americans are dealing with. Same like with Haiti. So again, that is why I say they're not free. Haiti's not free. Because when you don't have any economics, you're able to be controlled. If somebody can control money like what they're doing with Haiti, slapping them with this huge debt, and then putting them in the position that they have to now borrow money from the nation that they were so-called freed from, and the U.S., which had a hand in the situation, got all the benefits from it. The U.S. got all the benefits from it. Haitians got none of the benefits from it, even to this day. Okay, freedom, and let's go for, well, they are free. They are free, because I used to say it. I would rather have some be free than to and to live under slavery. But they still, the thing about it is they still are in slavery, because when you understand the U.S. Haitian politics and understand the occupation of the U.S., I forgot how many Haitians lost their lives when the U.S. went in. I don't know if it was between 1915 and 1934, but this little period of time when it was so-called necessary for the U.S. to go in there because they had all this instability. They always had the instability. They always had it. If we look at the time period, and I haven't looked into that yet, most likely the U.S. was trying to, I don't know if this was a time that the Panama Canal was being built and if that had any connection. There was some political going on. It had nothing to do with coming and saving these Haitian people from this instability of all these people, all this, I think they said so many presidents or their prime ministers had been killed. I think 3 was such a short period of time. That happened now. It happens now. So I totally don't believe it, that is why the U.S. so-called had to go. And there was some type of political agenda going on from there, that they had to occupy it and put it on the books, I should say, that they occupied it because they were occupying Haiti before. It is my belief that the U.S. had never left Haiti. They helped Haiti fight France, used them in pawns in their game to fight France. Once France lost, they got all these states for pennies on the dollar, and they left Haiti to fend for themselves pretty much economically, and then they controlled them. And even when they went in 1915, they took their money, I don't know if there was their national bank, about $500,000, and put it in the U.S. I don't know what this is. It's like place of, anyway, they were taking control of their money. So again, Haiti has never been freed. And I think soon as we stop saying that, then they will get some assistance. And then the curse, and I will say it here, the curse of poverty will lift from these people, because they can get the help that they deserve and that the U.S. government owes to these people, because they are the ones that have the hand in putting these people in this situation. They use these people as pawns in a power grab, which the U.S. won, and now they're continually going over there, messing around in these people's government, making it almost impossible for them to lift themselves up out of this poverty. And so, is Haiti cursed? Poverty is a curse. Poverty is a curse. And the next question is Haiti free? I think we need to stop saying that. These people are not free. They're not free. The U.S. has not left Haiti, even to this day. Even some of these missionaries, and I'm probably gonna make some people mad, but I'm just gonna call it how I see it. All these missionaries and these people going over there, these are U.S. government placed people to stay in these people's country, okay, and keep control over them. Okay, so they have never left Haiti. Haiti is not free. Haiti will not be free until we stop saying that they are free. And when we stop saying that, then people will be able, even around the world, will be able to lend a hand to free them. Haiti is the off the books territory of the United States, just like with Puerto Rico. I think Puerto Rico did that, and I need to follow up on this, but I know at one point I was keeping up with it. If I'm not mistaken, was Puerto Rico at one point not even able, even though they're a territory, it's this weird type of little citizenship thing going on with Puerto Rico, or that was going on, to the point where they were, they're a territory, but they're not citizens, they're not able to vote. Some strange thing going on. Worse than that, though, in Haiti. Haiti's just off the books. They're not a territory, so they're not able to get some of the assistance that they would be able to get if they were recognized on the books as a territory. This Haiti has been a territory of the United States since they got so-called their freedom from France, period. And the U.S., if the U.S. does not want to put them on the books as a territory, then the U.S. needs to pay these people back this money that they took out of their bank. From my understanding from this law professor, they never took it when they left Haiti in 1930. What was this, 1934? They didn't give these people, they didn't give them that money back. How are you taking this amount of money from a country that's already impoverished? You went there to so-called help them. So you take the money because you want to kind of, you're managing now. Again, see what I'm saying? The records are going to show that Haiti was a territory, still is, I believe, but at least at this record, this period of time, it can be proven. This was a territory of the United States. They were taking over Haiti. Okay, they took their money. They were impoverished then. When they left there, let's do some record keeping here to determine whether they gave them this money back. And it should have grown interest within this period of time. What is this, 1915 to 1934? How many years is that? How much interest would be earned on $500,000? I believe it was $500,000. Okay, so we have to start delving into these particular things in order to free our minds, first of all, determine fact from fiction and stories that we're being told, and allow, if we're going to be the savior of the world, setting up democracies in these nations, just like we did in Iraq, and now they're, well, I'm not going to go there. That's a whole different topic. But the point is, if we're going to set ourselves up as being the savior of the world, then we need to show proof of that being beneficial to the people that we're going to save. If we go in these countries and they end up worse off after we leave, then what type of democracy are we setting up? And what type of image is that portraying as us as a nation of the United States? What are we doing then? Now we have to pull this off, this cloak of nobility off of ourselves and look at what we're really doing. Are we going over here to help these people and to stabilize them, or are we over there for some other motive? Okay? Because if we leave and they're worse off, then we have to say, what's really going on here? What is the motive for going over there and so-called assisting? Where is the assistance? Where is it? Where is it? It don't look like assistance to me. Okay? So, I think that, and I don't, as far as these 7,000 Haitians, I don't have an opinion at this point about whether that's right or wrong. My thing is to fix the bigger issue. And the bigger issues is for the U.S. to address its hand in the instability of this nation. And also pay for their services. How about that one? If it was not for the Haitian Revolution, the U.S. would have never got all of these countries that they bought from France for pennies on the dollar. They would have never got that. That was directly tied to the Haitian Revolution. So with all this debt, they getting them debt for this and they getting them debt for that. How about, since we're talking about money and exchange of money, how for services and you owe because we lost these slaves and this equal this and loss of life, how about paying for services then? How about paying for the services that now you are the most powerful nation on the face of the earth because of people you use as ploys in your power game? Okay? And it's done now. The deal is done. So, hey, we in 2021 now. So, some people want to go back in history. I say, hey, we can't go back there, but we can go back with some money. Give them the money for services rendered. Okay? That this country would not even be what it is today had it not been for the Haitian Revolution. And then if we don't want to give the folks that money for the services, because I know that's gonna really make folks mad because slaves still, you look, well, slaves didn't get their money for their services either. So people, that's gonna be a big thing. You talking about reparations? Okay, well let's not talk about reparations. Let's talk about this $500,000 that the U.S. took from the Haitian government when they occupied Haiti in 1915, and let's start tacking on some interest. Give these folks their money and let these people establish themselves in their country. Then they ain't even gonna want to come here. They won't want to come here. Okay? You don't want them here. They won't want to come here because they can establish their own country, pull out all your imports and all this rice and shit. Let these folks export their own stuff, and they won't even want to come here. We'll probably want to start going there. Tourists, more tourists to want to go there. People will want to visit because they are able to establish themselves. France, they weren't given that reputation as being this, pretty much it was a cash cow for a reason. There is something in that region. There's something that is in that region that is of value. And if it was of value then, it's of a value now. And they can use that to strengthen their economy and strengthen their people. So I'm going to end it with that. I'll open it up for any questions that you have, any comments. I appreciate, I know this was pretty much just, I just posted it that I was going live just really quick. But I'll be going live again tomorrow, 10 p.m. Eastern time, either with a follow up with this or going into more, I'll be talking about different, history and different maybe unknown facts, so we can kind of start digging into these things ourselves, make educated decisions for ourselves. Start, what is freedom? When we get shown a picture of freedom, of a poor people, and I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm just saying a poor country, a country. Oh, this is an ideal situation. First Black, this is great. A liberated Black nation. They're poor. They're constantly in turmoil, constantly in upheaval. This is what is this? The epitome of what we should reach for as Blacks across the world? No. So when we start looking at these things for what they are, then we can start reaching for something higher. I don't want that type of freedom. Give me economic freedom, period. Then we can talk. But don't lift this up to me as this being an ideal state for Black people. It's not to me. It is not. And it should not be for Black people, and it should not be for the Haitians. And then people can start requesting what they deserve and start calling their government, their people, do right. Do right. You holding yourself out to be that. Let's be that then. All of us can do better. And this ain't a look. I love being a man. Go back to Africa. I ain't going nowhere. Shoot, I'm not going nowhere. I was born in the United States. I love this country. I won't, but anytime when you love something, when your person really loves something, you want that thing to be the best that it can be. You don't want and like a child, you're not always, oh, you're so beautiful. Oh, you're so handsome. Oh, you're so wonderful. You picking out their flaws because you want them to be the best. And when they do bad, you're going to put them in their place. Look, you need to get it together. So I'm not saying this from a point of criticizing it. Oh, it's terrible. I love this country. But I also think that it could do better as well. Thank you for joining. See you tomorrow night, hopefully.